a little easier. Welcome to another summer service at the Universalist Unitarian Church of Peoria. My name is Jill Thomas, and I'm chair of the worship committee. Our minister, Reverend Jennifer Innes, takes the majority of the summer off, and our services are presented by members and friends. She will return to the pulpit in late August and do the blessings of the animals and her traditional questions service. It's nice to see so many people this morning. In response to the violence experienced in Pennsylvania last night, our National Association has released the following statement. Unitarian Universalism believes in the right of free speech and the democratic process. Attacks like those at Saturday night's political rally weaken democracy, and the Unitarian Universalist Association condemns this attack. At a time when democracy is already at risk, these events will only make our political environment more precarious. As we prepare to meet this moment, we must return to our spiritual grounding and faithful practice. Take a breath, reflect together, wait for emerging truth over quick speculation. Anchor yourself in communities and relationships that foster resilience, liberation, and strategy. Cultivate nuance and seek out deep wisdom, political analysis, and spiritual grounding, as misinformation will be rampant. Especially keep that in mind. Misinformation will be rampant. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition is rooted in the values of human dignity, justice, compassion, and democratic principles. We will remain vigilant in our commitment to protecting our democracy and the integrity of its principles and the rights of all of its people. Let us keep love at the center. We are in this together. On a day like today, when the world seems so hateful and violent, it is a comfort to be in the sanctuary together. If you can't make it to church on a Sunday, you can live stream our service on Facebook. And if you're busy on Sunday, then the service is available on YouTube. No matter what medium you choose to use, you are welcome. Everyone is welcome here, regardless of your race, ethnic background, gender, socioeconomic status, your abilities, or your politics. We find strength in our diversity. Our current church building was dedicated on October 23rd, 2005. 2025 is also a milestone in Reverend Jennifer's ministerial life. So next year at this time, I think we should be planning a double celebration. We cherish the land our church occupies. As current caretakers of the land, we are working to restore portions of it to its native state. We recognize that this was once the ancestral home of the Peoria people. They were here long before the first Europeans came down the river. We celebrate them for who they were and who they are today. Now would be a good time to turn your devices to worship mode, otherwise known as silent. There's a slide that will help you accomplish this, or ask a teenager. They were born knowing how. We have a number of things to help make your worship more comfortable. There are hearing assist devices, a child-safe area where children can play quietly and toddlers can have some tummy time. There are fidgets to borrow in the baskets in the back. If there's anything else you need, our ushers and greeters are here to help. Please wear a name tag. I forgot mine, so again, I'm Jill Thomas. We can all get to know each other easier if we're wearing name tags. After the service, there's coffee and refreshments in our fellowship hall. It's a good time to get to know one another, and if you are new to us, I can guarantee you a warm welcome. Summer can be a time to try new things. Next Sunday, we are trying an experiment called T-shirt theology. Originally, we were going to ask people to send pictures of their T-shirts in, but we're going to be getting ready for the rummage sale, and there's all kinds of things going on. So there's no need to send in a picture. Just wear your T-shirt to church next Sunday, and you will have a chance to come up to the mic and share with the congregation why that T-shirt is so special to you. Now, there is a goal to this service. It's hopefully going to get the congregation to know each other as members in ways they might not have. You might find out somebody else is a Lions fan. You might find out somebody else is really supportive of autism awareness. That's what I'm hoping to come out of the T-shirt service. Those of you that are fairly new to us may learn a little bit more about our community and how they view the world. Since the fellowship hall is going to be partly prepped for the rummage sale, we were going to hang T-shirts back there, but we're not going to be able to do that. But if you don't want to wear your T-shirt, or you have more than one T-shirt to wear, we're going to line chairs up here and display the T-shirts on the chair. If you can tie it into one of the UU values, that's even better. This is one of my favorites. It's all wrinkled. We love diversity. There are a few rules. You can display an issue, but you can't display a politician. You can't have a politician referenced by name or even situation or nickname. So as long as we can follow those rules, we'll be in good shape. If you have any questions, please ask me. This type of service is a first for us, but it's been held in other services. I've been out on YouTube watching, and many of them are at evangelical churches, but there's even one where the minister talks about how T-shirt theology is evil. So I think it's perfect for the UU church, right? One of our major fundraisers this year is coming up, and that's our rummage sale. Donations are needed of clean and functional items. We're not going to be selling adult clothing again, but shoes and accessories are good sellers. It really takes a small army to run this sale, so please contact Lindy Peterson or the office to sign up for volunteering. Lindy's been sharing this sale for a number of years, for which we're very grateful. Sale dates are July 26th and 27th. The sale is going to be run a little differently this year. Details are in the Friday flock note or in the Builder newsletter. There's an optional volunteer training after church today, and Lindy says that anyone can come, rookie, a veteran volunteer, or even merely the curious. There's a lot of other activities going on at the church right now. There's Mahjong after church today. There's LGBTQIA2S+ group that meets the third Monday of every month. Regina is looking for volunteers to staff our Pride booth at Pride Fest on July 20th. UUs can enjoy a baseball game at Dozer Park on August 7th. See Tim Harold to reserve tickets. To stay in the know of what's going on, we have a monthly builder, a newsletter that goes out. We have a Friday flock note that gets sent to your email address, and notices are on most social media sites. And even with all of that, I'm amazed at the number of times I hear, I didn't know anything about that. Please hook yourself up with one of those sources so you can stay in the know. Now I would like to invite Jessie to the podium to tell us about a new program the RE department is presenting. Jessie?
I'm excited to announce that today we'll be offering our first class from the Faith Forward series of classes that we've recently added to our library of resources here at UUCP. Today, we'll be offering the first session of Beyond Inquirers, entitled What do UUs believe? So if you're looking for some talking points while you're staffing a Pride booth, or you're not quite sure what to say when somebody says, "But what do you believe?" Let's have a conversation. Today at noon in the conference room, we'll have some of these resources. In the future, look for our Inquirers class for very newcomers to get an idea of who we are and what we do here at church. Beyond Inquirers, we'll dive a little deeper. And we also have UU history, we have spiritual practice, we have a roots class to talk about where our faith comes from. So I'm really excited about the offerings that you'll be seeing over the next year. Hope to see you there.
Thank you, Jesse. My granddaughter and I went to a museum in Alton, Illinois, and the man that was telling us about the exhibits said, "You know, we have a church here that's haunted. It's a UU church. Do you know anything about the UU church?" And Kayla and I just looked at each other and said, "Oh, a little bit." And the guy said, "Well, they're really different. They believe in nothing and they believe in everything." So that's one way we believe. Now let us begin our worship service by singing our opening hymn together, Spirit of Life. Are we doing 2 verses? Are we doing it twice? Twice. We'll sing it through twice. I'd like to invite our outgoing board president, Linda Fairbanks, to come give us our opening words.
Time Together by Kenneth P. Langer. Let us take this time together to be open to forgiveness and be forgiven. Let us be open to diversity and be accepted. Let us be open to expression and be understood. Let us be open to compassion and be loved. Let us be open to awareness and be known. Let us be open to sharing, to exchange, to possibility, to awakening, and be hopeful. Let us be open to gratitude and be blessed.
Our chalice lighting today will be done by by Juno and her grandmother.
We come from many places along different paths, bringing truth. We come from different histories and different realities, and yet we come together as one people with faith that we can use our differences to heal ourselves and each other, to bring wholeness to a fractured world. We come seeking to find community, to find acceptance of who we are. In this place, we may find others who are much like us and others who are much different. May our lit chalice remind us that we are a people taught by different stories with many voices, but always one people working for a world where love creates justice and justice gives birth to peace.
A single candle emits a light and a warmth, both things we need when we need comforting and consoling. Many candles can be a celebration, like a birthday cake. Candles can be symbolic of unity, like unity candles at some weddings. Candles can be religious, like candles in a menorah or those lit for Kwanzaa. This morning, we light candles to represent something in our hearts: a hope, a loss, a remembrance, a joy. I will light the first candles from the chalice. Sherry will play some soothing music, and you are invited to come to the front and light a candle of your own. We have some news to share within our congregation. Melissa, our office manager, sent me a message this morning. She said, "Please thank the congregation for their care and kind wishes for my dad. He came through the surgery well, and it went much easier than expected." She said her dad had a rough night Friday night, but he's much better this morning. His heart scans are good, and she wanted to thank everyone for all of their kind support. We want to offer our condolences to Tim Harold and his family for the loss of Tim's brother Steve, who died July 10th. Steve is also survived by Rudy Ordaz, his cousin Bill Ordaz, Michelle Ordaz, and someone else Ordaz. I'm sorry. So Tim, we send you our condolences. We have congratulations going out to Gwen McDaniel on her graduation from Knox College in June. She graduated with a degree in archaeology and anthropology. Gwen is the granddaughter of Phyllis and Jim Close, who are very proud grandparents. Now, in our wider world, we are witnessing so much violence in our political world today. It is traumatic to watch, especially when shown over and over again on TV and streaming media. Our hearts go out to the spectators injured last night. May the family of the spectator that died be surrounded by love and support. Our gratitude goes out to the Secret Service who protected Trump and the crowds. That event could have ended much worse. It would be so easy to lose hope, but that lets those perpetrators win. Practice self-care. Turn off that repetitive news. Don't repeat unsubstantiated rumors. Get involved. Volunteer to get out the vote. Be an election judge. Rely on this community to process the trauma. Most importantly, vote. Now we will have a moment of silence to mark those things that are carried in our hearts but remain unspoken. Now is the time for our children and their helpers to exit the sanctuary and retire to the religious education wing. Lessons during the summer are held in a one-room schoolhouse format, and today they will be learning about forts. They will enjoy a combination of play and learning. Let's sing the children out. I'd like to invite Kathy McNeil to come up for a reading.
Today, the reading is from Esther Hurlbert, and it's on thoughts of it's not always easy to find love at the center. It's not always easy to find love at the center. There's not a set of easy instructions numbered 1 through 7 or 8 or 9. It's not always easy to find love at the center. Today, in Covenant, we celebrate our living tradition, which invites us to take deep breaths of fresh air into the newness of every day, so our minds, hearts, and spirits will be continually nourished. It's not always easy to find love at the center. So for today, we gather in covenant to celebrate the reality that love is at the core of our beings. Excuse me. And love will guide us if we open ourselves to the challenges which love requires of us. May we accept this challenge with dignity and grace. Amen. Several years ago, our Sunday collection began a custom called Share the Plate. It is a custom practiced by many UU churches across the country. Our Share the Plate program allows for 1/2 of the cash offering from our Sunday collection plate to be donated each month to a local nonprofit. The charities are selected because they share our UU values. This month, our Share the Plate recipient is East Bluff Community Center Food Pantry. The food pantry operates 4 Sundays a month from 8:30 to noon. Guests select from a variety of food items and then receive a prepared bag along with a choice of meat and dessert. Residents of this low-income area and a number of unhoused individuals are served. Breakfast is prepared by the Peoria area humanists and is served to the guests while they wait for their turn in the pantry. Guests can currently use the pantry twice a month. The pantry receives no government funding and depends on donations of product and funds. It's staffed solely by volunteers. You may put a check or cash in the plate, or you can put your donation in an envelope and indicate if it's for a pledge, a split with the charity and the church, or if the contents should go entirely to the charity. Thank you for your generosity of time, energy, and finances to support the mission of this liberal tradition. Will the ushers please come forward and collect the offertory?
Our speaker today is Dr. Mike Jongerius. He's been a member, he thinks, since the mid-'80s, late '80s. He's a family physician who recently retired following 30-plus years of practice in the Peoria area. As he aged with his patients, he developed a special interest in the area of Alzheimer's and other age-related dementias. Mike first offered to do this last summer, but the Sunday slots had all been filled. I think we're very lucky to have this topic delayed until now, when the topic of dementia is so prevalent in the news. Please welcome Dr. Mike Jongerius, for my grandpa forgot his memory.
Go ahead. I owe that title to Sandy when she was teaching at Keller. I think there was a kindergartner that was trying to explain why his grandfather couldn't make it to Grandparents' Day. Anyway, I just want to start out by recognizing this can be a trying morning for many of us, but I certainly wish everyone a good morning. As we probably all realize, dementias is not just a disease of the brain, it's also a disease of the heart. And I think St. Augustine appreciated that about 1,500 years ago. Let me start out by asking a question. How many of you remember what you had for breakfast today? How about breakfast yesterday? Breakfast a week ago? A month ago? Somebody eats the same thing every day for breakfast. How many of you remember what you had as your main course on the fourth Thursday of last November? It was Thanksgiving, by the way. So the point is, memory is very contextually related. It's not a simple process of retrieving information from the file cabinet, like every memory's been stored and we just need to find the right file clerk to go get it. Memory is dependent on the context, the cues, the repetition, the importance that we place on that particular event. And so we certainly understand the complexity of the brain much better than we did 20 or 1,500 years ago. But it's quite amazing when you think about our brains weighing in about 2 pounds. 80% of it is water. It's encased in a skull, so it's never in direct contact with the world. And yet we're able to sit here and visualize a sunset and even experience the emotions that may go along with it. It's amazing to me what can be done when you put 100 billion neurons together with 100 trillion connections as a result of that. And so I just challenge AI with that one. The point of discussing dementias is that we're here to talk about what happens when those connections and those neurons, those brain cells, begin to degenerate. And dementia is as many of you know, it's more of an umbrella term. There's many different types of dementias that I'm just going to mention a few of them, the 4 main types. But it's marked by a slow but progressive and a continuous decline in our cognitive abilities and our memory. That's a fairly straightforward definition of what dementias are about and what we're talking about. I'm going to talk about the 4 types, and not necessarily, I'm sorry, they're not in the order that I'm going to talk about up on the screen. The first one is frontotemporal dementia, and there was an article in, I think, Scientific American describing this at one time, entitled When Character Crumbles. This is a type of dementia that affects personalities. People can become the extreme of very apathetic and withdrawn to becoming disinhibited with their social norms. They sometimes develop a sense of compulsions. And one example of that, with this focus on repetitive nature of one type of this frontotemporal dementia, is by there was a radio lab on Maurice Ravel. I don't know if you've heard that one, when he wrote Bolero. You want to cue that music for me, Colin? Yeah, you know that, right? That's all you need to hear, because that just repeats itself, those 6 or 8 notes for like 15 minutes. And as people look back, because he passed away in an institution, people think that he had frontotemporal dementia when he wrote that, the early onset of that. And memory loss is not a prominent finding in that particular entity until later in its course. Lewy body dementias is associated with Parkinsonism, and it affects, one of the more prominent findings is it affects REM sleep. People with Lewy body dementia can have fluctuating course of their illness, but their sleep pattern becomes greatly disrupted. They have hallucinations. They act out their dreams. And it many times is associated with paranoia and other psychiatric manifestations. So a lot of these people are initially diagnosed with having a psychiatric illness. Vascular dementia is more of a stair-step decline, as people have what are called mini strokes or white matter disease or lacunar infarcts. It doesn't quite follow the textbook example of seeing steady declines on a stepwise fashion, but vascular dementia is certainly a contributing factor, maybe to all the other dementias that we talk about. The one we want to focus most of our attention on is Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is used interchangeably with dementia, and I will probably end up doing that. But the reason it's the most prominently one discussed is that it is the most common one. I think we have some data on it. Okay, it's the most common one. The estimate is that there's about 7 million people in the United States right now that have the diagnosis. There are probably many others that have not been diagnosed. The risk of it doubles about every 5 years after the age of 65. And by age 90, the estimate is that at least half the people that reach age 90 will have a significant form of dementia, usually Alzheimer's type. Its main risk factor is getting older, is your age. So there's what's been termed a silver tsunami. You probably have heard that term. You know, when 10,000 people, baby boomers, turn 65 every day, we know that this is a progressively greater problem, not just for our country, but for the world. And it's a very costly illness, obviously. So when you're kind of painting this dark picture about what lies ahead, it's easy to be pessimistic, but people say, well, is there anything I can do to try to prevent the onset of dementia? And there is a bit of good news in this based on some observational studies and some even controlled studies, one called the Finger Study from Finland, I believe, and it talks about lifestyle issues, things that we can control. Think about what the adage of what's good for your heart is also good for your brain. So we're talking about things like eating a healthy diet, plant-based, mainly whole foods. Think of the Mediterranean diet, the components of the Mediterranean diet. Exercise, regular exercise. Vascular risk management, the things that we already do to protect our heart, control our blood pressure, manage our lipids, avoid smoking. So there's some things that have been studied in certain populations where there's no single or cluster that eliminates the risk entirely, but there are some steps in our own life that we can take that may reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's dementia. What about this idea of cognitive training? You hear a lot about, you can even buy programs where you can do brain tests and do different try to do different puzzles and things, and what about the everyday things like people who read a lot, play cards, may want to continue with a hobby, people that are interested in, pursuing a different activity, learning a new language. Is that helpful at all? Well, sadly, there isn't a lot of great evidence that, working your brain is like exercising your brain, but and it doesn't necessarily avoid the risk of developing Alzheimer's dementia. But there's a theory that maybe what we're doing is increasing our cognitive reserve, sort of like your brain 401k. So if you can delay the onset of the symptoms, even though the process may be continuing, if you have been involved with some cognitive training and have developed a cognitive reserve. So lifelong learning is an example of something that may prove to be beneficial. Let's see. Let me switch a little bit and talk about what does dementia look like at its early stages. I think everyone has probably had some experience with people who have end-stage dementia. And sadly, there's not a lot to offer in the form of treatment or prevention at that stage. But what does it look like at an earlier stage? We all have it. I mean, we've all experienced losing our keys, or I guess our fob is the right term these days. Misplacing, walking into a room and not knowing what we were there for. And when that happens, if you're 60 or 65 or maybe even younger, you probably had a question that says, oh my God, is this it? Do I have it? And so how do we distinguish sort of the normal changes that occur as we age that don't necessarily indicate that we're developing a serious dementia? And that's a tough question to answer. But I just want to talk a little bit about some things that you can look for. There's a great little handout, and hopefully you all got it, called the 10 Warning Signs from the Alzheimer's Association. Did everybody get that? Yeah, I think I have one right here. And it is very nicely outlines, and in a sense, it's reassuring to people, and for other people, it's sort of a, maybe I should take this a little more seriously type of reading. And it talks about the different deficits that may warrant a further look that's sort of beyond, it's just a senior moment. And what I would say is look for, if you're experiencing any concerns in yourself or in others, I say look at 3 keys to look for. One is the behavior or the memory loss or the loss of ability to think, carry on a language, carry on a conversation, remember names. Is it a change from the person's baseline? Sandy knows everybody's birth date in our family and our close friends. I know none of them. So if I don't remember a birthday, it's no big deal. If she starts to forget birthdays, I'm worried, right? And she'd probably be worried. Secondly, look for a progression over time. Dementia is, view it as on a continuum, but it tends to, and it usually does worsen over time. So eventually it becomes much more obvious. It begins to impact activities of daily living. And when it does that, it's much more obvious. But even before then, people can maintain their activities of daily living, the basic things we do and take for granted every day, meal times, hygiene, active language, ability to have social interactions. But if you're noticing a progression of problems over time, that may be a sign to go get a more formal check done. And you can even do a mini mental status exam on yourself. These are some of the tests that are in the news all the time now. But there's one called the self-administered Jerry cognitive examination called SAGE. I did it on myself, and you can repeat this in 6 months or a year, or if you're involved with a physician, they may want to perform that type of an exam for you and tell you to get it done again in 6 months or certainly within a year, as one additional way to get more information about where your cognitive functioning stands and what's happening over time. And the third thing is look for problems that occur in multiple settings, different circumstances, and see if it's observed by others. So a lot of things are just happening within the household. Say names. It's a common thing. If you're at a holiday affair, a party, and you're introduced to all these people and you don't remember their names, well, okay, that's one thing. But if you start forgetting the names in smaller social circles of friends that you've had for many years, or family gatherings, and you're forgetting the names of family members, those are some indicators that, it's happening in different settings, and it's perhaps a sign that there's something more significant going on. There's a term for this gray zone, and I think I have a slide for that. It's called mild cognitive impairment. Have you heard of that? MCI is the abbreviation for that. And it's it's a clinical term to describe cognitive or memory problems that are sort of beyond the okay, it's just a senior moment, or it's not really that important, it's just part of normal aging. But it's not quite to the level where people say, you definitely have dementia. You definitely have Alzheimer's dementia. It kind of covers this gray zone. And I'll get back to this in a second because it may impact treatment options that you have if you have this diagnosis. The second question after asking, do I have it, is, well, the sentiment that if this is a relentless disease and we don't have a great cure or a prevention or treatment for it, what advantage is there to knowing about it? What, should I just let things play out, or do I want to know? Well, let me just emphasize a couple of things that I think benefit an early diagnosis. One is to make sure you have the correct diagnosis. There are many other factors that can be screened for that may contribute to cognitive impairment or memory loss. Physical, psychological illnesses. There are some basic lab tests that most primary care offices will be able to do. Screening your blood work, doing a clinical evaluation, confirming history from other people in your family or friends if they're willing to contribute some information. So getting the correct diagnosis and maybe even undergoing some imaging studies is important. There's a psychological benefit. They've done surveys of people that ask them, do you want to know or would you rather not know? And the overwhelming majority, I think it's like 80% of people said, I'd rather know. If you think that I may have dementia, I'd rather you share that with me and let me know. And there's something obviously better about knowing than dealing with the unknown. There's an empowerment issue. If you are still able to make a lot of decisions for yourself, and you may be in this group of people that have early symptoms that could be dementia, that have been diagnosed as early Alzheimer's, you can still participate in decision making at an early stage of this illness. Treatment options, your meds, you may want to make a more focused effort to decrease the risk factors. You participate in planning for your future. Maybe your housing choices are going to be different, your financial planning, your end of life questions, your living will, your bucket list may need to be reprioritized. These are some advantages, I think, to finding out and not opting to, well, I don't really care. There's nothing I can do about it. And that brings up what can be done about it. You may have heard about this in the news lately, but there's a couple of new drugs. There was an initial drug that was pulled from the market, but there have been two other drugs that are unique in how they help, potentially can help with Alzheimer's dementia. And I mentioned these with Alzheimer's. One of the pathologies is a buildup of this abnormal protein called amyloid, and it causes plaquing. You may hear that term. Basically, what it's doing is destroying the neurons, the brain cells, and also disrupting the synapses or the connections between all these cells. And the theory is that, well, since this is a pathological finding of almost all brains that have significant dementia from Alzheimer's, what if we were able to attack the amyloid plaquing? And that's what these new drugs do. They're monoclonal antibodies that are specifically targeted at destroying the amyloid plaques. Now, the target group for this, the only group that's been FDA approved for this drug, are people with mild cognitive impairment and very early onset dementia. So if you want to avail yourself of at least being considered for those drugs, that's the target group. And these drugs are administered, it's very complicated, through an IV infusion about every 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the drugs. The one I'm thinking of is Leqembi, which came out a few months ago and got FDA approved. There's a new one. Eli Lilly just got approved. These drugs do have some serious side effects, including bleeds and swelling, so you need repeated imaging studies. It's very costly. When the first drug came out, they charged $52,000, convenient number. And there was such an outcry that they quickly reduced it to $26,000. So it's a bargain. But Medicare has approved this drug. They will cover it. But they have certain stipulations. Among that, you be part of a follow-up treatment or a study group. It's only administered through certain centers. I think Illinois, last time I checked, had about 20 places. Peoria is not one of them, as we talk here today. And if anybody knows of a place that is administering these drugs, let me know, because as of Friday, I couldn't find any. There are some places in Chicago, and there are some I think there's a downstate location where they may administer this. But yeah, obviously, you need intense follow-up. And so, there's some travel issues and all of that if you're going to a tertiary care center for this treatment. The hope is that these drugs will have an expanded indication and will be refined over time to where they can even be proven to be more effective. The studies have shown that it does reduce the plaque formation. How well that correlates with your clinical improvement is what's sort of debatable right now, but the studies over a relatively short period of time show some degree of improvement or stabilization of the decline. And so the drug has received FDA approval and Medicare is covering it. So I'm trying to, the name of the other drug is called Kisunla, Kisunla. Who comes up with these names? I don't know, but it's interesting. Leqembi and Kisunla are the two monoclonal antibodies. These are new drugs. You probably will be hearing more and more about them and what impact they may have. There's a concern about Medicare's funding, by the way, as there's lots of people, if they expand the number of people that are receiving this drug. Let me spend a few minutes talking about the role of the caregiver. As I mentioned, Alzheimer's, dementia is on a continuum, and eventually everyone is going to need some degree of care to help carry out their activities of daily living. And by far, the majority of people that have Alzheimer's, dementia are not in nursing homes or, memory centers. They're at home, and they're taken care of by usually a spouse or other family members, sometimes friends, sometimes a group of people. The estimate is that there's about 17 million people in this country that are essentially unpaid caregivers. And these are people that are on the front lines. They're dealing with, helping people with their activities, daily living, safety issues, coordinating care with specialists, with imaging centers, testing. Don't forget, there's a disease of the elderly. So there's a lot of other comorbid conditions that also need attention. And this becomes a really stressful and physically draining activity of the caregiver. My experience has been that it's usually it defaults to the person who lives the closest. It's just a matter of having to be there. This is difficult to do from a long distance. And so people who are the caregivers, they suffer from stress, depression, anger, frustration, and even some guilt. I had a lady tell me that, when I realized what this is going to entail, I realized my personal bucket list just sprung a big leak. And I'm thinking about myself, and I feel guilty about it because I got somebody who I love is fading away. And so I went to this one conference, and they were talking about the importance of the caregivers and how the caregivers need to take care of themselves. And they always draw the example of, when you're on an airplane and the oxygen mask drops, put it on yourself before you put it on others. And this lady raised her hand and said, "Hey, wait a minute. I'm not a passenger on this damn plane. I'm flying it. And I'm flying it without a co-pilot, And so you recognize the fact that caregivers are, I think, the true heroes in the fight against dementia. And the best advice I can give is to be open to help. If people, church groups, anybody willing to bring a meal, give you some respite care, take advantage of it. There's a term called the martyr syndrome, where somebody, just refuses all help. Only they can do it, or they feel like compelled that they have to be there 24/7. That's just a very difficult way to approach this illness. It's a family disease. There's also support available, educational information. Alzheimer's Association is a great resource. They even have, they can assign families, assign a caregiver, a navigator, someone that would be available 24/7, that can help coordinate the care, put them in contact with the right resources. If you need some paid help, they can help set that up. There's recently been a Medicare initiative called GUIDE, GUIDE, and I forget what it stands for, but this is a Medicare covered benefit where they will assign you a navigator to help you with planning doctor visits and resources, support groups. And this is a relatively new initiative by Medicare. And it's a way to recognize the role that the caregivers play and how important they are, and offer them some degree of support. So there's help out there. The brochure that I gave you has contact information for the Alzheimer's Association. I think that's a great place to get started. There's a local office here in Peoria. I think it's right off of Sheridan, by the Walgreens there, I think. Okay. Anyway, so let me close and recognize that, you know, there is a glimmer of hope with these new treatments. But as I heard somebody say, we have a little more to offer our patients in way of an effective treatment, as Dr. Alzheimer did 120 years ago when he first described this disease. It's one of the few diseases that has been around for this long that's a top 10 cause of death for which we have not had major inroads in treatment plans. Hopefully that's changing. But Alzheimer's remains a heartbreaking disease. And let me paraphrase a patient who was a caregiver of a patient. He said, "Every day I'm watching her disappear. Yet what Alzheimer's cannot destroy is that connection, that connection forged by compassion and love that gives us the strength to live another day." And so I leave you with that, and I hope I'll be happy to answer some questions during coffee hour. And hopefully this has been helpful for all of you. And if you need some additional resources, I probably can get my hands on a few things for you. Thank you.
Please join me in singing our closing hymn, Peace Like a River. Please stand as you are will. I'd like to invite Jean Jost up to do our chalice extinguishing.
Good morning. The chalice extinguishing is the title of the final annotation to today's meeting. An unquenchable flame. As we extinguish the flame on our chalice, we ignite it inside ourselves. Our commitment to our mission and to one another is an unquenchable flame. Let us remember that we are not alone until we light this flame next time.
Each of us, imperfect and vulnerable body spirits that we are, is connected to the vast web of love which holds us and will not let us go. We are connected through ancient common ancestors to creative lineages that shape us. We are connected to the unborn who still shine as stars in the sky. We spin this interdependent web from our very lives as spiders spin fierce silk from their spinnerets. It will not let us go, no matter what we do or don't do. May you always know you are held in this sacred web of love. So be it.
Aye.